Hey there, spooky friends, and welcome to another episode of the Scaryish podcast.
Woo!
I'm Robin Grace, this is Adam Diaz,
Hello.
And today we're here with a joint topic.
Indeed, we don't do these often.
Yeah, we don't do these very often, but it seemed like a good idea today.
Yeah, it did. I'll get into like the story behind what made us pick this particular topic, but our topic is, as I'm sure you've seen on the episode description or title, Final Destination 3. No, we're not talking about the movie, the shitty one with the roller coaster. Yes, we are going to be following up on the series that we've had on the show previously.
Final Destination 3 is not that bad because it's
better than 2.
It has some of the most iconic deaths in the entire franchise.
Such as
nail gun through the face.
That one's brutal. The tanning bed scene.
The tanning bed brutal. 3 is not the one with the laser eye surgery, right?
It might be actually.
I just think 3 has quite a few deaths that are memorable in it.
I think Final Destination 2 is the worst of all the Final Destinations, but it has the most iconic scene, which is the logging truck, hauling all the fucking... Yeah, that one for sure definitely traumatized a generation. But before we get into our topic or talk about that shitty movie anymore, I do want to mention that for this month of June, we are going to be running a contest where every new episode that releases... you can go onto our social medias, find that post, because we have a Facebook, we have a Twitter, we have an Instagram. Our Facebook is facebook.com/scarishpodcast. Our Instagram is @scarishpodcast, and our Twitter is @scarishpod. When you go there and you say, hey, there's the post that says, here's the episode, share it. So if you're on Facebook, you can share it. It goes to your friends. Cool. If you have your privacy settings set up properly, we can see that you shared it. If you have super privacy settings, we won't be able to see it, which means you will not get that entry for sharing it because we're going to have a giveaway. So you can get up to 4 entries per week. 1 for each social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And 1 for taking an older episode, if you're a fan of the show, and saying, hey, I really like this episode, putting it up on your Twitter, doing @ScarishPodcast, and then sharing it with all the people that follow you and saying, here's why I like this episode. When you @ us, it means we can track it. So if you don't @ us, it's very possible we won't see it. We did have quite a few entries for the first week, which was super cool to see. And some folks did actually reach the 4 entry limit, which is awesome. Thank you. Shout out. We appreciate you. So hit us up on our social medias, find those posts, and share it. On Instagram, share it to your story, and try and @ us. It makes it a lot easier for us to find it. Similar to if you retweet in Twitter, that's actually pretty easy for us to find. But it never hurts to @ the show. That way we can see who's doing it and have multiple records of it, the notification on there. So either way, we appreciate y'all, and we hope that you can help us find new listeners, and hopefully they'll be friends of yours so you can talk about the show. In addition to that, just wanted to let you know some of the stuff that you can win, because we're going to have a giveaway at the end of this month where we take all your entries, put them in a big pool. We're going to pick 4 folks. One's going to be our grand prize winner, and they win quite a few things. And then 3 of them are going to be consolation prizes. And to go over the things that you can win, I'm going to kick it over to Robin.
So for the consolation prizes, I'm going to be doing 3 mugs, 1 for each of the 3 consolation prizes. And they're going to be a Scaryish podcast design that I'm in the process of designing. I haven't done it yet. And then the grand prize is going to be a set of these Patreon exclusive keychains that I've created, a set of Scaryish pins, a customized RPG set of RPG dice, which is D&D dice pretty much that Adam makes, and then a custom mug. So we'll put your username or nickname or whatever you want to put on there.
Yeah, so pretty solid grand prize. We're very excited, and we hope you are too. So keep continuing to share through the month of June. We're going to do the drawing, I think, in the first week of July, because June has episodes 1 through 31 or something along those lines. It's one of those magical months where we're going to get 5 episodes in. So lots of opportunities to get entries. But without further ado, let's get into this episode. Sound good to you?
Yeah.
All right, let's talk some Final Destination style shit. Another FYI, we do have our puppies in the studio with us. So if you hear fighting, whining, crying, or barking, that's Robin and I, because they're asleep.
No, they're not.
They're like, no, we're not. And then they immediately started fighting. So, all right, this week I had a topic in mind that I wanted to cover this week that I've kind of danced around a bit. And as I was investigating more and more, I sort of just realized that it doesn't work as a really good Scaryish topic. Spoilers, it was H.P. Lovecraft. I kind of want to go into that. But sometimes the more you cover stuff, the more it turns out there's not a lot of paranormal qualities to it. It's really just sort of becoming more of a book report. And that's okay in the case of true crime because there's like actual crime and that stuff is horrifying. You know, it doesn't have to have a touch of the paranormal. True crime is just scary enough as it is, but biography stuff can get boring if you're not interested in that topic. And I think everyone hears H.P. Lovecraft, they want to hear like Cthulhu's real or all that other stuff, but it's like H.P. Lovecraft is like kind of a separate style entity than the works that he produced. So when Robin was on her way home from work today, I told her like, hey, I don't think I'm going to cover Lovecraft. It just doesn't make sense. She said, that's fine. We'll figure something out. And then we're just sort of talking about her day and my day, and axe throwing got brought up. And I think we were talking about like the cost of axe throwing or something like that, like how much it would cost to go do it somewhere
and
out
then
here.
you brought up like the dangers of axe throwing and horrifying ways people could possibly die.
Yeah, we were just kind of talking about that. And I thought like, wouldn't it be fun if I covered freak accidents this week? Like someone doing an axe throwing event and some Final Destination shit happens and someone dies. And Robin goes, that does sound like a good idea. And then she got home and we started working. And I looked it up, and of course, Robin has a series on this show already called Final Destination that has 2 installments, not just one. She did the second installation of it in July of last year, so it's been a little bit under a year since we've done it. But Robin did have the idea that it'll be really fun if we did it together. And I 100% agree. I think it's going to be a blast. So this episode is Final Destination 3.
Now, he says it's going to be a blast. We have to keep in mind that
People died.
People die. This is a topic where people die. It's just
bizarre circumstances.
Yes.
I think we're all morbidly fascinated by it. There's a loss of life involved that is tragic and sad, and there's family still involved with those folks. And like their pain is never going to be diminished, especially because of the fact that it was bizarre. But I do think that if I were to pass away in some sort of bizarre manner, everyone would find it interesting, and I give you all open permission to be like, it's fucking crazy. So you get to be enthusiastic about my demise, but don't be happy that I'm dead, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, and unfortunately for this, like, horror movie, cult classic, franchise type of thing, similar to that, sometimes people's numbers are up, and that's just how it's going to run, and there's nothing you can do about it. And in the case of these particular people that we're going to cover in our episode today, that's how it goes.
Yeah. So we're going to cover some bizarre ways people have met their maker. And I will say before we get started, I looked it up pretty fucking deep and I could not find a single case of anyone dying in an axe throwing incident. Like, I'm sure someone's died from a hurled axe, but like all the places that you can go and do axe throwing, the websites all boast that no one has ever died doing it. It's like something that's like highlighted everywhere you go.
No
like,
one has ever died, but that doesn't mean no one's ever been horrifically
I couldn't
injured.
even find horrific injuries. I found like cuts and scrapes and things like that. And there's definitely videos you can find online of like people throwing it like an idiot and it bouncing off of something and like flying directly back at them. But people are fast enough typically to get out of the way.
You don't even have to throw it like an idiot for that to happen. You could throw it completely the right way.
The videos I saw of the people that were in significant danger happened because they threw it and didn't even hit the target. They hit like the wall or the floor. And it's like, okay, cool, try and aim for the wood where it will stick. It is a dangerous thing, though. So it's kind of funny because you go to their websites and it's like, no one has ever died doing this. Also, here's the waiver you have to sign where if you die doing this, we're not in trouble. So it's a dangerous thing, but I couldn't find anything Final Destination-y for axe throwing, which is what kind of got us thinking about this topic. So I just want to put that out there. Don't expect axe throwing deaths. If you're an axe throwing enthusiast, please continue to enthuse. So I'm not going to rain on your parade. All right, that said, we're going to have some wild shit for you this episode. We went through Robin's old scripts, too. If you want to know, episode 192 is Final Destination 1. Episode 236 is Final Destination 2. To make sure we won't double up on any of the previous bizarre accidental deaths that have been covered before. So we did our due diligence, and all of these should be brand new.
Yeah, we made sure we didn't double up even while picking our topics, like our different things that we're going to cover. We're like, I'm covering this.
We're calling them out.
This. Yeah.
We're like, chef behind. So, Robin, I hope you don't mind, but I was hoping to start us out, sort of the whole age before beauty adage, if you will.
You definitely have the age on me.
I hate you. But the first individual / incident that I'm going to tell you about is a man named Chris Fogg. I encourage you not to read ahead in my script so you can have authentic reactions. Okay. I saw your eyes darting back and forth as I was saying this out loud. Chris was a critical care nurse for an ambulance company and was living near Boise, Idaho.
All right.
When this incident took place. An air ambulance company is exactly what it sounds like. Not all emergency patients get transported via helicopter. Sometimes it's a smaller, private-ish looking plane that's staffed with nurses, which is what an air ambulance is.
I never
heard of it until this.
I've only ever heard of helicopters,
Yeah.
So
that was indeed the case of what was needed here on June 27th, 2007. So this is a while ago. This is 16 years ago. A patient needed transporting from Twin Falls, Idaho to Seattle, Washington. And Chris was one of the critical care nurses that would be on that flight.
They had to take him to Seattle Grace.
Oh, God, I hate you so much. It's more dangerous in Seattle Grace, I'm pretty sure, than being on any sort of airplane. And Anya agrees. They loaded into the twin-engine turboprop plane, which is to say, it's like the planes that you see on like TV, like almost like a Cessna-style plane.
Okay.
Where the engines are props, so they're propellers. They're in the front on the wings, so like all of the windows and like where you board is behind the propeller.
Okay.
So you don't have to worry about like it being in the middle, like how jet engines usually have their jets mounted somewhere like halfway or further back.
Yeah.
This is like more front led. So it's like front wheel drive. So they loaded onto this plane and they departed for what would be a relatively short plane ride because like Idaho to Seattle is not very far. So at some point during the flight, Chris got out of his seat to go get a bottle of water. And when he came back, he sat down and he and everyone on the plane heard a very loud boom, which is definitely a noise you do not want to hear when you're like 20,000 feet in the air. Unfortunately for Chris, he had just sat down and had not yet refastened his seatbelt, and the sound they all heard was the window next to him exploding. So they're not exactly sure what caused this. They said it was a rapid change in pressure, but it seemed for the most part as though their entire ascent was pretty standard and the window shouldn't have blown up, basically. But it did. It had a catastrophic failure and it just blew the fuck out at 20,000 feet in the air.
That is crazy.
This is like what people are afraid of, right? Like,
I mean,
you go in the sky and you think of like all the things that could go wrong while you're up there, if you're like me. And that's definitely high up on the list is like, oh fuck, like I really hope this window doesn't blow out because I'll definitely die.
There was that woman on the Southwest plane. Her window blew out or something. And her head got sucked out the window, right? It didn't get ripped off, but like she broke her neck or something getting yanked out the window. Yeah,
that's something I was going to talk about later on the script, but you're absolutely right. Another incident also happened with someone on a Southwest flight. This one's a little bit different. So as soon as they heard this, Chris basically is partially sucked out of the window with his head and right arm entirely outside of the aircraft, 20,000 feet up. Chris's left hand was still inside and it was on the ceiling of the plane. So trying to imagine like
hold him in
having your head and your right arm like sucked out of a window on an airplane and your left hand is still inside behind you, like trying to keep yourself from being completely sucked out. And then like his knees were up against the wall, again, trying to fight from being pulled out and, thrown to his death. At this point, his body was forming a seal in the window, which kind of made it worse because it made it so that he couldn't get himself back into the aircraft.
Yeah.
And it was like he was just sort of stuck where he was unless he was going to get pulled out. And he struggled for what probably seemed like forever until he managed to push himself as hard as he could so he could create just a little bit of space between his chest and the window itself. Once he did that, it actually broke the seal and he was able to force himself back into the aircraft, much to the surprise of everyone.
Yeah. How does that happen?
Yeah. He was very, very, very lucky. And when he came back in, his face was gashed and covered in blood, and it was still gushing blood. The pilot realized the plane had depressurized, even though he didn't know what was going on, and dropped to 10,000 feet, looked for an emergency landing right away. Like, every loose piece of clothing, paper, equipment that was in the plane that wasn't, strapped down was just sucked out of the fucking window once Chris had managed to come back in. And the guy who was, being transported was, strapped to a gurney in the plane. Watched the whole fucking thing happen. He was just like, oh my God, that dude's gonna die. So he watched the whole thing. Chris had to take one of his pillows to make himself a makeshift tourniquet because a bunch of the equipment that they could have used was sucked out of the window. And they wound up landing. They made an emergency landing in Boise, and Chris was instead rushed to the hospital, and he wound up surviving with nothing but stitches in his head.
That's crazy.
That is crazy. That's why I want to go first also, is because this is the only one that I cover where the person survives.
This doesn't seem like Final Destination.
It's pretty Final Destination-y. A fucking window exploded and this dude almost got sucked out. This is the first act of Final Destination where he
But
realized
he survived.
he realized death is after him, and now he has to be looking over his shoulder for the rest of his life.
All we know from this is that he could live a long and happy life after this.
You don't know that. Okay, have you ever watched Final Destination? They don't like miss death killing them once and they're like, movie's over. That's just not how it goes.
Yeah,
it
but we
keeps
don't
coming
know.
back after them.
All we know is that he survived such a harrowing ordeal.
Yeah, it's horrifying. That's the point. But this is the only one who makes it out alive in my script.
All right.
So, all right, that's my first one. Robin, let's jump over to yours.
All right. So my first one, funnily enough, is one where they don't die either, but it is more Final Destination.
I'm going to, as soon as you're done, I'm like, this isn't Final Destination-y, just to piggyback.
So the first one I'm going to cover actually took place out here in California, and it doesn't necessarily end in death that I know of because I can't find any record of what happens to him after this. But it was April of 2016 in the Lost Hills, Malibu area. And it was about a half mile south of quote unquote the tunnel. I'm not from Malibu, never been to Malibu, but I think there's only one tunnel in that area.
That's why it's called the tunnel.
The tunnel. At around 4:30 p.m., a man was driving along when he lost control of his SUV and slammed it right into a guardrail. I don't know if he was intoxicated. I don't know if he was distracted, but he drives his SUV straight into a guardrail. What makes the situation unique is that on the other side of this guardrail was a cliff drop-off.
Oh, fuck.
So I sent you the picture of it, and it is like horrifying what this car looks like hanging off into this cliff. But it's like something out of a horror movie or an episode of 911 or something like that with this car hanging off. And it's just teetering on the edge of this cliff. And I was trying to look up information on this particular accident. And there are other vehicles that have gone over the cliffside in Malibu before or since. There's just people drive off into this cliff.
Sounds like I don't want to visit Malibu. It sounds like it's very hazardous.
So these mountain roads are known to experience things like rock slides, boulders in the middle of the road, that kind of thing. Amazingly, for this particular driver, though he was disoriented from the crash, he was able to make his way out of the car. So he's disoriented from hitting this rail. His car's hanging off, half on the road, hanging off into the cliffside. And while he's trying to orient himself after this car accident, getting out of his car, he then is struck by a passing tour bus.
Oh my God. What an asshole tour bus.
So he's getting out of his car, and then this bus comes by and just hits him. And all I know is that he is taken to the hospital and he's treated for his injuries, but I couldn't find anything about whether he died or not.
It sounds like he lived.
I assume because there's nothing about him dying that he does live.
But there's definitely a Final Destination element of avoiding death, like
and then
in this
something
way,
just
and then
comes
something
by
else
again.
coming by
Yeah.
for sure. Just saying it didn't happen at 20,000 feet in the air. That's all. But pretty good, solid first one.
Yeah.
All right, let me move on to my next one then. So my next one is about a man named Roger Marcelino. Roger and his son were both from the Philippines. They were native to the Philippines, and they made their living, as far as I can tell, fishing and, of course, selling the fish. This seems to have also taken place in late June / early July.
Are all your topics in this time period?
They might be, actually. But
Wow.
This time, it was like 2019. So this is only like 4 years ago. I guess this serves as a warning for everyone to be safe in the coming weeks, because you could say we're entering the danger zone.
Because it's June, July era, or
Exactly. Anyway, so Roger was a fisherman in a way that I'm not familiar with. Like, I go fishing. I used to go on a nice long fishing trip once a year for like a decade. I used to do that. I haven't done it in a while, but I don't fish the way Roger and his son fished. It appears from the story that I have read that he and his son would travel to the Palawan River in the town of Bugasong, which is like in the central western part of the island chain that makes up the Philippines.
okay.
When they'd go, this is the part that is like foreign to me, is that they would dive under the water. They would submerge themselves and they would fish while submerged.
I think that's fairly common. People will go diving and they'll have a spear gun with them and they will fish using a spear gun. And so they'll see a fish and just,
completely. It's like a very American way of fishing. Like you take the fight to them and you take a gun with you. Like,
okay.
It's cool. Like I never thought to just go to where they live. It definitely adds an edge of danger to fishing. All right, back to the show. So when you think of hunting, you think there's like more of an element of danger than you would with fishing, especially if you're like bear hunting, like with a bow, where it's like a challenge,
Okay.
It's not like, deer hunting is still dangerous because they have antlers, but you usually have a gun, you're in a deer blind. Definitely not as risky, but like fishing is like you're on a boat, you're drinking a beer, you cast a line. If nothing shows up, oh well, if it does, you tug on it, toss it in your boat, and then go cook it up, This is different. Like this is definitely different. Like fishing is relatively safe. Unless you're like fishing for massive, dangerous fish. Roger and his son were fishing for tilapia, which are not especially dangerous. I read an article, it's like the third most consumed fish in the United States nowadays too. And it's like a fish that's easily polluted with mercury. So it's like very not good for you to eat, especially if it's been tainted in any way, shape, or form. But that's not the danger we're talking about here.
Okay.
So it's a fairly safe fish to fish for. Or so you would think. Roger managed to snag a fish, and he was staying submerged to continue trying to catch more fish. The next part can only be speculated about, which his wife has done based off of Roger's technique that she knew about. It is believed that Roger, while underwater, and in order to free his hands to continue to fish, placed the tilapia that he caught in his fucking mouth. Like not a minnow that you put in your mouth, you're like, I'm going to keep it there. Like he bit the fucking thing. Like he stuck it in his mouth, bit down, and kept fishing.
Sounds disgusting.
It's fucking nasty, right? And he would hold the fish in his mouth so he could catch more fish before returning to the surface with his haul. And this time, while holding the fish with his teeth, it managed to thrash free and swim to freedom. Well, I shouldn't say freedom. It swam. It didn't swim the right way. Instead of swimming out of Roger's mouth, it swam down his fucking throat. So it's just like...
Tilapia are not that small.
No, like they average like 9 to 12 inches. Like these are kind of big fish, but it's underwater. So it just swam as fast as it could and as hard as it could, like right into his throat. And Roger came to the surface and ran home, which wasn't very far. He wasn't able to breathe, but he was able to get enough where he could maintain his consciousness, He attempted to dislodge the fish, and then his wife attempted to dislodge it. And it was completely unsuccessful. They wound up getting help from a nearby hospital, which was only a mile away, but the problem is they didn't have good phone reception. So it took a long time for them to get an ambulance out there. By the time the ambulance arrived, he was unconscious. By the time they got him to the hospital, he was pronounced dead on arrival.
That's such a crappy way to go. It's just like...
It's so bizarre.
Yeah.
It really, really is.
Something's fishy.
Wow. I hate you so much. I've mentioned before that I have a fear of drowning / suffocating on account of the fact that I almost drowned as a child. So this one was triggering as fuck for me, like going through like all the details of how this dude passed away. His son, in case you were wondering, was like in a completely different part of the river, had no idea this happened.
I was just telling my coworkers today about how when we went to Mexico and went swimming, I was hyperventilating because I hate the idea of going into the ocean, and I hate being surrounded by fish and underwater creatures.
I don't like having my mouth like unsolicitedly penetrated. Like it's just, it combines a lot of fears. Are you talking about the fish
or my hands?
All. Check yes for all above. The idea of a fish just being like and like trying to swim up your fucking mouth.
You guys can't see. Okay, that sound comes with a hand motion. It's not like...
I guarantee you, everyone out there can picture the hand motion. You can go ahead and do it right now and you'll be correct. But it's just such a fucking horrible thing. And like, you think like, wow, what a fucking crazy way to die. This probably never happens, but it's more common than you'd think. A guy in 2016 who was a fisherman in Tanzania was on a boat sorting through a big group of fish that had been hauled on board, most likely by a net. Just like sorting through, like some fish you toss back, some fish you keep, While sorting, a fucking fish desperately attempting to jump back in the water, launched itself upwards into his mouth and got lodged in his throat and his chest. He made it back to land, got to a hospital, but died while he was being prepped for surgery.
You know what sucks about the fish? A fish's design, right? Okay. It has those spines, the little spiky spine things on the fins. And they get, when you're petting this fish,
You're going from snout to tail.
It's flat.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to pull this fish out, it's like those barbs can totally just open up.
Ironically the same design as a fish hook.
And you can't pull it out.
Yeah.
Because it's just a bunch of spikes. Like, you know what I mean? It's just, it's awful.
It's like a scene from Grey's Anatomy. Like, this dude came in with a fish in his chest, like we're prepping him for an OR. But unfortunately, this guy went up passing away first. Wow, yeah, and the fish is a bomb, and Izzy fell in love with him. But, yeah, bizarre way to die. All right, that's my second one. Let's move back over to you.
All right. I think my topics, my chosen people are going to have different vibes than yours.
Why? Why
because
is that?
Because mine are not just freak accidents. Mine are, they survived this horrible thing that should have killed them, and then they get killed by something else.
Well, those are just my first two.
Okay. Cool. I'm looking forward to it. All right. So this next one is something that I think is really sad. It's very unfortunate. So February 2018, a 7.2 magnitude earthquake hits Oaxaca, Mexico. And I think Adam's covered earthquakes in the past. I don't think you covered this era of earthquakes.
I think I covered the San Francisco quake and described the Richter scale and how, like, I think past 7, like going from 7 to 7.1 is like double the intensity.
So some of you might already know about severity of earthquakes, and you know how bad a 7.2 is. For those of you that don't know, the range of 7.0 to 7.9 on the magnitude scale is categorized as a major earthquake that causes serious damage. Around 10 to 15 of these 7 range magnitude earthquakes happen a year, whereas 2.5 and below happens millions of times a year.
Right, it's a ton.
Yeah, it's a huge amount.
The ground is always moving under your feet, whether or not you notice
and
it.
we just don't feel them most of the time. But there was one time where Adam was half asleep, and he was like, "Do you feel that? It's an earthquake. It's happening right now." And
that was recent. That was here.
Yeah,
right?
it was here. And I was laying in bed. I'm like, I don't feel anything. I think you're crazy. And then he looks up on his phone and he's like, "Yep, 2-point-something earthquake."
It was
like,
a 3-point-something, actually.
Yeah, I was just like, I don't feel it. I didn't feel
I could
anything.
just feel the bed slightly shaking, and I knew it was more than Robin was capable of without getting out of the bed and like grabbing onto the frame and shaking it.
Sometimes I wiggle in bed, and he's like, "Why are you shaking the bed?" I'm like, "I don't know, because I feel like it."
She's a wiggle worm. She doesn't sit still. She's like, "Hey, will you spoon me?" And you grab her, and it's like grabbing a fucking puppy that doesn't want to be held, just like squirming constantly.
Anyway, this one, the 7.2, it shook the people of Oaxaca, and they were understandably very panicked. They were
shaken.
I literally said shook, babe.
I know, and I said shaken.
Not stirred.
I hate you so much.
They were understandably panicked, and it was the 3rd major earthquake in Mexico in 6 months. So the first of these quakes actually killed 400 people.
Oh my God.
Across the country of Mexico. But this one, luckily, didn't claim any lives despite the severity of it. I think the first earthquake in that chain of earthquakes was like an 8-point-something.
That's huge. That's catastrophic.
Yeah, and that's why it caused the death of approximately 400 people. But this one, at the time, had not claimed any deaths. No one died from this 7.2 earthquake. The traumatized people from all these earthquakes happening and all the aftershocks and things like that, they were too scared to sleep in their own homes because they were afraid of being crushed, by a building or something like that. So what a group of them did was they went and gathered in a field and either slept on the ground or slept in their cars or vehicles, trucks, vans, anything, vehicles. While they were there, government officials, including the governor, were going around to check the fallout of this earthquake. And they did so while flying around in a military helicopter.
Oh, no.
Unfortunately, for those individuals, the helicopter, while trying to land in this vacant lot, this open area, the helicopter spun out of control and fell straight into the ground, similar to our SUV story, right? The pilot lost control. It fell into the ground and flipped over, skidding into the townspeople. So this helicopter crash caused the death of 13 people.
Wow.
5 women, 4 men, 3 children, and then those are the ones that died at the impact site. And then a 13th died later at the hospital. So this crash killed 13 people and then injured over a dozen more people. And the people on the helicopter were practically unharmed.
Wow.
Yeah. And that maybe that's how death likes to deal, right? They're like, you guys survived the earthquake, but I need some souls. So we're going to have this ridiculous bullshit thing happen and kill a bunch of people.
That's messed up.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
That they survived a 7.2 earthquake.
They would have just picked anywhere else.
Anywhere
man.
else.
That's fucked up. That's super sad. My next one is actually very similar to yours as far as like the location of the person is like directly what affects them. So
okay,
let's get into it.
Let's go.
After the commercial break.
Oh, I forgot those exist.
All right, we are back. And I'm going on to my third story and the final destination number 3 topic that Rob and I are sharing for this wonderful episode of Scaryish. So my third one here is about a man named João Maria de Souza from Brazil. This incident took place in what appears to be July of 2013. João was just a standard working dude in Brazil, especially in the southeastern part of the country, where he was a cattle farmer. He was, by what I've read, a very happy guy. He loved his family, especially his wife and his mother. His mother stated that João caught meningitis when he was 2 years old. Doctor said, your son's probably going to die. And she managed to use all the money she had saved up and worked a ton to earn more money so that she could buy him medicine consistently until he got better and he wound up surviving. And it was like a miracle that he survived. It was a very close call as a very young man.
Okay.
As an adult, he lived a fairly content yet simple life. And then one night, he went to bed with his wife, and they were laying together before they drifted off to sleep. His wife was awoken by 2 distinct loud noises. João was also woken up by 2 large noises, but his experience, despite the fact that he was laying next to her in bed, was a little different. Her experience was she heard the sound of a cow falling through their roof, and then the sound of that cow landing. João's experience was that he heard the sound of a cow falling through the roof, and then the sound of a 2,000-pound animal crushing him as it landed in their bed directly on top of him.
It's like some Donnie Darko shit.
It's fucking crazy, right? Like, I would be so pissed if this happened to me. I have petitioned the powers that be, meaning Robin, repeatedly to switch sides of the bed. Like, I want to switch sides so I can be closer to the air conditioning. I'd be closer to the door to protect her from intruders, all that. No, she wants to stay on that side of the bed. Can you imagine if that sort of shit happened and we finally switched and then a cow landed on me that night?
What are the odds?
I'd be like, damn it. Like, can you imagine if that was what happened with João that night? He finally got the side of the bed he wanted, and then he got crushed by a cow. The cow, right after it landed, got off of him and walked away. It was fine. The cow was unaffected. João's wife was completely fine too. Not a scratch on her, from all the accounts I've read. But João had a very clearly fractured leg, had to go to the hospital immediately. He wound up going. He's conscious the whole time, in fairly good spirits for, some dude who's been crushed by a cow falling through his fucking roof. But it took longer and longer and longer for a doctor to see him. It seems he was in the hospital for a full day before he was seen by a doctor. And by the time the doctor came to see him, he was fucking dead.
So is that how the medical system in Brazil is? Like, they just don't...
I can't say it about the entire country because it's a very, very large country, Yeah. But like in this particular case, in this particular part, it took forever for someone to come see him. And because of that, he had internal bleeding that was stealthily getting, in the way of him living anymore. And it's possible that he might not have survived anyways because he had been crushed by a fucking land animal that's 2,000 pounds. It's a ton. It's a literal ton.
Is it?
Yeah. I mean, they get up to 2,400 pounds. The cows specifically that I looked up from Brazil, can get up to 2,400 pounds. I think 2,200 pounds is a ton in the United States, then metric ton is 2,000. If I'm not mistaken.
It's like the difference between TON and TONNE.
Yes, correct. And it's, you can't imagine that fucking impact that would happen to you. And it, broke a lot of stuff that was inside him. The home was built next to an elevation. So a grazing cow wound up just walking onto his roof in the middle of the night.
Oh my gosh.
And collapsed through. It's bizarre. And if you're wondering, man, this one has to be super uncommon. It was the 3rd incident of a cow falling through a roof in 3 years. In this part of Brazil. It was the only one with a casualty. So I guess you couldn't say it's super uncommon. It's not entirely rare. It's more medium rare.
Oh, I get it. Beef joke.
Yes, it was a beef joke.
Yeah. Just this makes me not ever want to build like a hobbit hole, where, You dig underground. You create your little
Digging
hobbit
underground
hole.
is different from like building a roof next
But
to a
imagine-
cliff where you could just jump onto the roof.
Imagine you don't make it structurally sound. And so this cow's just walking above you, chilling.
Anything walking
and then
above
a
you.
hole just, sinks through and destroys your roof and lands
I'm
on top
okay
of
with
you.
not living
And
in a hobbit hole.
especially if you were a hobbit size, it would definitely murder you.
Yeah, if you're a hobbit size, you got landed on by a cow, that would be the end of your story. Like, not there and back again, like there. That's it. You're done.
You're there. Okay. That's a pretty good joke.
All right, that's the last. Oh, no, that's not my last. I have one more after this, so you're up next.
Okay. You know what's funny is there's probably a lot of people that listen to this podcast that are like, Lord of the Rings, I don't get it. Hobbit,
man.
I don't get it.
Come on, guys.
Anyway, all right. This next one is, to me, kind of like one of life's really dark jokes, I think. Because it's so upsetting.
As
for
soon
me.
as you said that, all right, I think you guys know already. I have a very dark sense of humor. As dark as you think it is from listening to this show, it's probably 10 times darker. So when you said dark joke, like so many just ran through my head, and I blame you for that.
Would you say you're 50 Shades Darker?
I hate you so fucking much.
Anyway, in 1940, it was in the midst of World War II. Roy Whitcomb had been a merchant seaman on board a ship called the Anglo-Saxon. You are almost 40, and that made you laugh?
Sometimes if you're not expecting the word semen to pop up, it just makes you chuckle. Like, I'm not holding back my chuckles. They give me delight.
Anyway, he's on board a ship called the Anglo-Saxon. It had left Newport with a crew of 32 people, 32 men.
32 seamen.
Many of which were from South Wales. This ship would go on to sink. 7 of the crew would manage to escape on a boat in the middle of the Atlantic. 2 of those 7 would survive this.
Holy shit.
One of these men was Bob Tapscott. He was 19. He was familiar with the sea as he was sailing around the world since he was 15. The other was Roy Whitcomb. Roy was no stranger to sailing himself. He sailed on dinghies since he was 6 and joined a training ship at 11 instead of going to grammar school, which is like elementary school, I think. He went on to sail the seas, and he would go on passenger ships. He would go on freighters. He just wanted to be on the ocean. That was like his thing. During the early days of the war, he had to live on a lifeboat for a week after his ship was lost.
Wow.
How I read this was that the ship he was on, it sunk, and that's how he survived. He just went on a lifeboat until he was saved or something. Because I don't have a lot of details on that. In April of 1940, he marries Cynthia Pittman during the madness of the world. July, he joins the Anglo-Saxon. The ship was bound for Buenos Aires, and it's armed with naval gun protection because it is World War II, and you need guns to protect yourself on the ocean because Germans have U-boats. They have all this like new technology that they're testing out and things like that. So you got to protect yourself on the open sea. August of 1940, the ship finds itself 500 miles west of the Azores. It's an archipelago in the North Atlantic Ocean.
An archipelago is a group of islands.
It is a group of islands. Thanks.
I learned that from DBZ Abridged.
Oh my God. That night, Whitcomb was standing watch in the wheelhouse while Tapscott's playing cards. There are 4 explosions that are heard, and then the sound of machine gun fire that's heard across the deck. They were being hit by a German raider, because of course they are. The ship goes up in flames in minutes, and even the lifeboats on this ship are damaged.
That sucks.
That boat goes underwater within the hour. It just burns up super quick and sinks. So those 7 surviving crew members are able to do so thanks to the remaining jolly boat that they have available. And this boat is used, these boats are used to ferry like crew from the main ship to the shore, to the pier, or whatever. Kind
that
of like,
answers the question I was about to ask.
Yeah, kind of like how cruise ship have the little boats that take
right
all the passengers to their, what are those called?
Final destination.
No, no. They damn it. That's so apropos. Okay, no. So they take the passengers
Ashore.
to go ashore to do their land excursions, things like that. Same thing, jolly boat, except they're not here for a land excursion. This boat is what keeps them alive. And they don't row it right away, right? Because they have the Germans still scoping out.
The Germans.
Yeah. They are lucky enough not to get gunned down by them because the Germans are aiming at all the other survivors that are
so fucked up.
Yeah. So they gun down all those other survivors. They hide in this boat and don't move and just let their boat kind of float by, hoping they don't see them. The men keep watch in strict rotation, as well as taking turns rowing once they get out of the vicinity of the Germans. 4 days in, the men start getting dehydrated, understandably. Some develop gangrene.
Ugh.
The first man dies on the 11th day. The next on the 14th day. The chief mate jumps overboard on the 15th day and takes one of the others with him.
What the fuck?
I think he goes willingly. So these
It's just like, why would you jump off in the middle
Yeah.
of the ocean?
You're already 15 days in and there's no sight of any land. You know, it's like, this is hopeless.
Yeah.
On the 19th day, another one of them goes overboard. So this leaves Whitcomb and Tapscott as the remaining survivors. So there are moments during this whole thing where the two of them contemplate just jumping overboard too, because they've been out there for ages and there's no sign of help. There's no anything. On the 22nd day, it rains. So they're able to have all this rain
Right.
to
Have some
hydrate
fresh water.
themselves. Yeah. They have enough water to last them 6 days.
Nice.
It rains again 8 days after. So the 30th day. Yeah. So the 30th day it rains. This isn't enough to sustain them forever. They can't just live on periodic rain, you know.
And you need food.
So there are different ways where they're surviving on food. They have like little pieces of biscuit that they've had from the ship, or
The bread that the elves gave them.
oh my god, yeah, one bite will sustain them for a day. Or like a nibble or something, right? I don't remember exactly. My brain's fried.
There's another Lord of the Rings reference, just for those of you who don't know. For the uninitiated.
But they try to catch fish. They had like a little safety pin or something they try to fish with. It obviously doesn't work. They just try all these things to kind of feed themselves.
Right.
They start eating their own like flaking off skin.
Gross.
Stuff like that. Yeah, it's nasty. Anyway, they somehow survive for weeks more.
Wow.
And they survive through storms. Their skin gets super blistered from the sun. They're starving. They're dehydrated. They're on this boat from August 21st to October 30th.
Wow.
They're out there for 70 days in the open ocean. I can't stand one afternoon, guys. Okay. I can't imagine 70 days. That sounds awful. While they're really weakened and they feel like they can't do anything anymore, they're crawling around on this boat because they can barely move. They finally get grounded on this beach. So they finally hit ground. Then they come across a farmer and his wife. There's actual living people on this place that they get grounded on. And these two help assist in their rescue. They get people to come in and help them. They're nursed back to health in a hospital. And they even get to meet the Duke of Windsor at the time, who was King Edward VIII.
Wow.
And his wife, the Duchess, during their recovery. So while I sent you a picture, and it's a picture of them in like wheelchairs with those two talking to them.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. By the end of January 1941, Whitcomb is ready to go home. The government agrees to place him on the Siamese Prince, which is a cargo ship traveling from New York to Liverpool.
Oh, no.
And so he gets put on this ship as like a VIP passenger, right? Because he's war hero type thing, survived a whole bunch of stuff. Within days of leaving the shore, the ship gets hit by a U-boat. So this,
I've been like, nah, dog, I'm going to stay here in New York. I'm not going back out on that water.
This U-boat fires 2 torpedoes at them and hits their ship, and there are no survivors.
Wow.
His wife is understandably absolutely devastated. She's told the original boat was presumed dead, heartbreak. And then she finds out he's alive, which is like sheer joy.
It's a miracle.
And then she finds out again, like BT Dubs, his other ship was just torpedoed. And it must have been such an awful feeling. But I guess you have to think about the fact that this is World War II and it's just not a safe time to travel by boat.
Yeah, no shit.
Right? And you're traveling to Europe? Come on. That's like...
I've been like, why don't you send my fucking wife to New York? Like, how about you bring her over here? That's so terrible.
Her daughter from her second marriage recalls that her mother would tell her, stories about Roy and things like that. And there was one thing that she told her about where the night that she found out that the Siamese prince had been sunk, after she found that out, she went to sleep. She fell asleep. She was woken up very suddenly. She just woke up. And she said that Roy was standing at the end of her bed and he was wearing the suit that he had when they were married.
Aww.
And he just smiled at her and she knew that it was him looking after her. So I thought that was really sweet. It's like a little bit Final Destination, but also a little bit of a ghost story. So I think that's really sweet. The Duke telegrammed her after all of this happened and gave their condolences as well. I saw a picture of the actual telegram. I thought that was cool. The boat that they survived on, that little jolly boat, was donated to the Imperial War Museum in London in 1998. I don't know if it's still there, but that would be really cool to see it.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah, but it's really sad that he survives such bullshit, to just die again.
I mean, like, the definition
not die again. He didn't die the first time, but you know what I mean.
The definition of insanity is doing the same thing again and expecting a different result, you know? Stay off the fucking boat, my dude. Like, there's no way in hell after 70 days on a fucking dinghy or whatever, like, I barely managed to survive. And as soon as I'm, like, back to health, I'm just like, let me get on a bigger boat with all these fucking assholes out there that are going to sink this goddamn thing again. Like, that is so, so sad.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to move on into my last one and the last Final Destination tale. And this one's pretty fucking Final Destination-y. I don't think Robin's going to have a whole lot of problem with it. Okay. But you never know.
I am very particular in what I consider to be Final Destination-esque. Okay. You have to almost die, survive, and then get murdered in the most mundane bullshit way.
Well, that didn't happen for your last one.
Okay.
It wasn't mundane bullshit. It was just like he got murdered in the way he avoided getting murdered in the first place because he got back on another boat.
What are the odds?
Sad. Just saying.
I mean, at that time, I'm sure the odds were high, but still, it's unfortunate. It's like that, the woman who was on...
It's like that Alanis Morissette song, Isn't It Unfortunate?
No. It's like that woman who was on the Titanic, survives the sinking of the Titanic, gets on another boat, boat sinks. She survives that. Doesn't she die on another boat?
The third boat, yeah.
Oh,
and then there's Molly Brown, the unsinkable Molly Brown, who I think sank twice and survived both of those. But all right, let's move on. All right, so the last one we have for you folks is one of Michael Anderson Sloan, also known as Michael Anderson Godwin. For our fans of true crime, this will toss in a little taste of that dark, dark stuff you crave.
Coffee?
So, no. Twisted humanity.
Oh.
So, in 1980, there was a woman named Mary Elizabeth Rowham, and she was found in her West Columbia apartment in South Carolina, dead. She was 24 at the time she passed away. She had been sexually assaulted and beaten to death with an electric iron. After investigating, the authorities were able to connect a man named Michael Anderson Sloan, which I'll call him Sloan, even though Godric is the other last name that he went by.
Okay.
Michael Anderson Sloan to her murder. Sloan was on a work release in the area from a local prison where he had been held for robbing a woman at knife point. So he had a history of violent crime already.
Okay.
Although they matched him to the murder fairly quickly, the legal system took its time, as it often does. So it took until 1983, 3 years later.
We've done a lot of true crime.
Yeah.
That happens a lot.
Until Sloan was convicted of murder and sexual assault and sentenced to death by way of the electric chair.
Okay.
Sloan always insisted that he was innocent, appealing his charges as one would do if you were proclaiming that you were innocent. And there were problems with this case. I found some of the documents and the filings and the things that happened during the appeal. Not going to get too deep into it, but I do want to give you some details. One of the key things, there was like two prongs to the prosecution. One of the key things that they found was the discovery of a broken watch that was said to belong to Sloan. So it's like, oh, look, we found this thing that belonged to the one person who we've already arrested. Like, how convenient. The other thing was that they were going to get his father to say it was him that did it. And while preparing for the case, the prosecution interviewed his father and presented him with the watch that had been recovered at the scene of the crime, asking him, "Do you know whose this is?" And his father said, "Oh, that's Michael's."
Wow.
They said, "Cool."
Okay.
They left. Afterwards, his father's realizing, oh, they're going to try and get me to make my son go to jail. And he was like, I thought they had obtained that watch from my home because it was in my home when they showed up.
Oh.
And so he's able to go where the watch is being stored, which was in his desk, and recover it and say, hey, this is Michael's watch. I don't know where you guys got the watch you have, but I have Michael's watch with me. Meaning that the watch that was connecting him, like the smoking gun, so to speak, was actually not Michael's, according to the dad. The prosecution didn't really realize that Michael's father had found this other watch until later on. So they decided that when they were going to have him on the stand as their witness, they were going to question him as if it was a cross-examination, basically accusing him of lying and fabricating the whole thing where he found this extra watch to undermine, his testimony, even though they were the ones putting him up there to present it against Michael. Here's the thing. The entire line of questioning that they did to discredit their own witness during that trial should not have been allowed at all.
What?
They were not allowed to do that. Other shit happened in this trial too, but that one is the most significant. And I will say that Michael was convicted of both of those charges, but enough was found wrong with the proceedings of the trial where they had to go back to court for his appeal, and the charge of sexual assault was expunged entirely. They said, we can confirm this dude didn't sexually assault this chick, which is super fucking suspicious considering she was sexually assaulted. So it's okay, so someone sexually assaulted her and then Michael showed up to murder her? What the fuck is that about?
Yeah.
So he's still in jail, but because he had that charge expunged, his sentence is reduced from execution by way of electric chair to life in prison. So his life has essentially been saved. It's gonna spend a lot of time in prison, but he's not going to be executed. It's a big victory for him. Now, the entire time Michael's in prison, he is what is called a quote-unquote model prisoner.
Okay.
He works to better himself. In 6 years, he earns 2 college degrees in education. He plans on working with kids to teach them how to live a better life when he gets out eventually. By 1989, he has built this plan for his life for when he gets out and is just hoping that he has a chance to sit in front of a parole board and plead his case, and then he can get out. He's serving his time, and that's just, where he's at in this point in his life.
Okay.
But in March of 1989, Michael is sitting on the toilet in his cell, and he's wearing a pair of headphones that are connected to a TV set. You think headphones nowadays, you can picture what headphones are. They're sound devices that you put over your ears. They're portable speakers that you strap to your head.
I've never plugged earphones, headphones, whatever, into a TV.
You were born in 1989. That's why. This dude was just an adult in 1989. I think he was 26 at this point. Maybe a little bit older. I think he's 29. But some headsets used to be really fucking big. And you'd plug them directly into a stereo, or you'd plug them directly into any sort of an electronic device that had audio output signal.
Okay.
So that's what's happening here. He's sitting on his toilet, and here's the thing. Michael doesn't have money. He doesn't have a lot of stuff, and his headphones are not working. So he's trying to figure out what's wrong with them. And as he's attempting to fix them, something unfortunate happens. He takes one of the cords that has become frayed, and he puts it in his mouth so he can work on stuff, and he bites down on that cord.
Sounds like a real bad idea.
When he does that, he is electrocuted to death because he is sitting on a metal fucking toilet. So this dude who proved his innocence and showed, hey, this part of this was not me. He couldn't prove that he didn't murder her. He was, still going through that, gets the electric chair sentenced to him, figures out a way to avoid the electric chair, and winds up sitting on a metal toilet and electrocuting himself to death. They find him sitting on this, and his mouth and his tongue are just destroyed from the electricity that passed through his body. It passed through him and into the chair, so it basically electrocuted him from top to bottom.
Oh my God.
It's this horrible, horrible makeshift mockery of his original sentence. He dies from this current passing through his body, and when they find him, he's already dead. They conduct a small investigation and let everyone know, it was an accident. He unfortunately did die from electrocution, you know? And everyone's like, oh, it's justice. This is what was supposed to happen in the first place. It's if you look at it that way, if you ignore the fact that he appealed and was, acquitted.
It is a pretty strange coincidence that that's how he died.
Yeah, it is very fucked up. And there's a lot of people out there who say, the guards just killed him. Like, they just fucking electrocuted him to death through some means, and then they just chalked it up as an accident because they were upset that he wasn't going to get the electric chair. But like, all these other accounts are like, this dude proclaimed his innocence the whole time. He was a model citizen when he was in jail, and he just died of this tragic accident.
I don't know if it would be the guards if he was able to be there for 6 years with nothing happening to him. You know, why would after 6 years they decide, well, now we're going to electrocute
Well, that's the
him?
thing. Nothing happened to him is pretty subjective because, like, unless he was seriously fucking injured where he had to be transported to a hospital, there would be no record of anything happening to him.
Okay.
The record would be he died, which is unfortunately what happened. They insist, like, this was a terrible accident, like, he was due for a hearing for parole soon, and, you know, everyone understood that he was trying to make himself better. But, you know, what it comes down to is there's a lot of folks out there that see that's like, he was destined to die that way. Like, that's why this happened. And other folks out there are like, this is just a horrible tragedy. But either way, he avoided death that way, and it came for him regardless.
Yep.
So I figured that one for you would be the most Final Destination-y.
I dig it.
Or esque, or however you wanted to put it. So it's very bizarre, though, for sure.
Definitely very bizarre. Strange coincidence. Could be one thing, could be another thing, could be God punishing him. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. Like, you really just don't know when stuff like this happens, like exactly what transpired to make it go down, except for like a horrible confluence of circumstances all combining for someone to die in just a horribly terrifying way.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's my last one. And I think you're out of them too.
Yeah.
Huh? All right. So that was Final Destination 3. We hope you folks enjoyed that. Some tragic, bizarre ways people have died, trying to avoid death in some cases, and it just comes for them. But yeah, if you have any stories you would like to share with us, obviously it doesn't have to be about Final Destination style stuff, but it could be about supernatural, paranormal, true crime, coincidental, extraterrestrial. We would love to hear it. You can email storytime@scaryish.com. You can go to our website, scaryish.com, click on Contact Us. It gives you a form to fill out that does come directly to us. Or while you're over there on those social media channels sharing the post to get entries into the contest, you can also hit us up there. Facebook is facebook.com/scarishpodcast. Instagram is @scarishpodcast, and Twitter is @scarishpod. We would love to hear from you. Robin, for folks who would like to donate to us, how can they do so?
You can go to patreon.com/scarishpodcast. Those are monthly donations. Tiers start at $8. I am very excited because the new Patreon pins are coming for Badge of Honor tier patrons and above. Very limited number, so hopefully if you guys want them, you can log onto your Patreon and sign up for us. If you're not into the monthly subscription type thing, you could also go to ko-fi.com/scaryish podcast, and yeah, all your donations really help us keep this show going.
Indeed. So thank you so much to everyone who listens, everyone who participates in the contests, and everyone who supports us in all the various ways you guys do. It is amazing, and we appreciate every single one of you. But that is everything we have for episode 267. So, Robin, why don't you go ahead and sign us out?
Keep on creeping on, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye-bye.